Tonight the sun will go down. You will flip a switch. Light will flood the room, and you will not think about it twice. But somewhere in the last few seconds before your hand finds that switch, in the half second of true darkness, something old wakes up inside you. Your skin tightens, your ears sharpen, your eyes strain toward shapes that are not really there. You tell yourself it is nothing, but your body does not believe you. Why does darkness still do this to a species that invented streetlights, phone flashlights, and glow-in-the-dark stickers for toddlers? You are not afraid of the dark itself. Darkness is not dangerous. It is just an absence of photons. So what is actually happening in that half second? The answer is far stranger than fear of the unknown. It is a fear with a job, and that job is older than language, older than fire, older than your species itself. Start with what darkness actually removes. Not danger, information. For most of human history, your eyes were your best early warning system. A predator 40 feet away, a rival group approaching from the tree line, a snake coiled near the path. Your eyes caught these things before your ears or nose ever could. Darkness switches that system off, and when your best sensor goes offline, your brain does not shrug and relax. It escalates. It assumes the worst because assuming the worst was cheaper than being wrong. This is called error management theory, and it explains a strange asymmetry in how your brain treats mistakes. Imagine two errors. 1. You hear a rustle in the dark, assume it is a predator, and it turns out to be the wind. Mildly embarrassing. Costs you nothing but a racing heart. 2. You hear a rustle, assume it is the wind, and it turns out to be a predator. That mistake does not cost you embarrassment. It costs you your life. Natural selection does not care about efficiency. It cares about survival. So your ancestors who defaulted to fear in the dark outlived the ones who defaulted to calm. You are descended quite literally from the nervous ones. The evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Nesse has spent decades studying why fear evolved the way it did, and his research keeps landing on the same conclusion. Fear is not a malfunction. It is a smoke detector, a cheap, oversensitive alarm that goes off constantly because a false alarm is annoying, but a missed fire is fatal. Your fear of the dark is that smoke detector, tuned by hundreds of thousands of years of nights spent without walls, without locks, without electric light. Have you ever wondered why a false alarm feels so real in the moment, even after your rational brain already knows the truth? Now add a second layer to this. It is not only that darkness hides threats, it is that your brain refuses to leave the darkness empty. Cognitive scientist Justin Barrett coined a term for this, the hyperactive agency detection device. Your mind is built to assume that movement and shape imply intention. A shadow that shifts is not just a shadow. Some deep, fast, preconscious part of your brain treats it as something that wants something from you. This system fires so easily that it sees faces in wood grain, figures in curtains, eyes in the dark corners of a room that is, in fact, completely empty. Researcher Kang Lee at the University of Toronto has spent years studying this exact tendency, something called pareidolia, the human habit of finding faces and figures in random patterns. His work shows that this is not a glitch limited to anxious people or children with big imaginations. It happens in nearly everyone, and it happens fastest under exactly the conditions where information is scarce. Low light, vague shapes, half-second glances. In other words, night. Your brain would rather manufacture a face in the dark than admit it cannot see anything at all. Which mistake do you think it prefers to make? Even Charles Darwin noticed this pattern more than a century and a half ago. In his writing on the expression of emotion, he described fear responses that seem to appear the same way across wildly different cultures and species. The widened eyes, the frozen posture, the held breath. He was not writing specifically about darkness, but the pattern he found, fear as an ancient, shared, almost mechanical response, lines up perfectly with what modern researchers now understand about nighttime anxiety. This was never a personal quirk. It is a shared inheritance. Here is where the story gets stranger. Anthropologists studying small-scale, non-industrial societies today have found something remarkable. Cultures with no shared history, no contact, no common language, still describe nighttime the same way. Danger increases. storytelling increases. Supernatural beliefs cluster overwhelmingly around the hours after sunset. Ghosts do not wander at noon. Monsters do not live under the bed at breakfast. Why does darkness, across every culture on Earth, become the canvas onto which humans paint their fears? Because for nearly the entire span of human existence, night actually was more dangerous. Large predators hunt disproportionately at night. Human vision, unlike a cat's or an owl's, is almost useless without light. For a huge stretch of your evolutionary past, nightfall meant retreating to a fire, a cave mouth, a huddle of bodies pressed together for both warmth and protection. The people who felt nothing when the light disappeared did not get a medal for bravery. They got eaten, quietly, without ceremony. And so that lineage ended, while the anxious ones kept watch, kept still, and kept breeding. You inherited their nervous system. Not their world, just their nervous system. That is the mismatch. You now sleep behind locked doors, under solid roofs, often within shouting distance of 100 other humans. Statistically, your bedroom at 2 a.m. is one of the safest places you will occupy all day. And yet the switch still flips. The ears still sharpen. The shadow in the corner still, for one unreasonable half-second, looks like it moved. Some researchers call this an evolutionary mismatch, a gap between the environment your body was built for and the environment you now live in. Your fear of the dark was calibrated for open savannas, dense forests, and unlit paths between settlements. It was never recalibrated for suburban hallways and street-lit apartments. Your brain did not get the memo that the world changed. It is still running software written for a different century, for a different several 100,000 years, really. And it has no plans to update itself just because you installed a nightlight. This is also why children fear the dark more intensely than most adults, and why that fear so often centers on the exact things you would expect an ancient alarm system to flag. Eyes, teeth, something under the bed, something behind the door. Developmental researchers have long noted that this fear tends to peak around the age children begin exploring independently, then gradually fades as experience teaches the brain that most shadows are, in fact, just shadows. But it never fully disappears. It only gets quieter. Have you noticed how it never fully leaves, even in adulthood, even in a room you have slept in 1,000 times? There is something almost moving in this, if you sit with it long enough. That flicker of fear you feel walking to your car at night, or reaching for a light switch in an unfamiliar house, is not a flaw. It is a message handed down through an unbroken chain of ancestors who survived long enough to become your ancestors, specifically because they took darkness seriously. Every one of them, without exception, made it through enough dangerous nights to pass their genes forward. You are the end product of that chain. Every irrational chill down your spine is, in its own strange way, a kind of inheritance, a gift from people who never met you, who could not have imagined your world, but who nonetheless equipped you to survive a version of it that no longer exists. So tonight, when the room goes dark for that half second before your hand finds the switch, notice what happens. Notice the tightening skin, the sharpened ears, the shapes your mind insists on drawing out of nothing. You are not being irrational. You are being ancient. And underneath the switch, the locks, and the streetlights, something in you is still standing watch at the mouth of a cave that no longer exists, protecting a person who, for one flickering moment each night, becomes every ancestor who ever kept you alive.